Hey, everybody. We'll get started in about 5 minutes at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll get started here in a couple minutes at the top of the hour. Thank you. All right, we're going to go on ahead and we're going to get started. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Safety at the Top, the final webinar in our 2022 Ladder Safety Webinar Series in partnership with Werner. My name is Stephanie Matos, and I'm here from the American Ladder Institute. I'll be passing things over shortly to Diana Arshin and Eric Blankenship, two senior product managers of climbing at Werner, who will lead today's presentation. As always, before we begin, a few quick introductions and announcements for those new to this webinar series. The American Ladder Institute, or ALI, is a not-for-profit association dedicated to promoting the safe use of ladders. Its members are affiliated with the ladder and ladder component manufacturing industry, and ALI is the American National Standards Institute approved developer of ladder safety standards. Each March, the ALI and its partners sponsor National Ladder Safety Month, a campaign all about promoting the safe use of ladders, both at home and at work. This year is the 5th celebration of National Ladder Safety Month, and we are excited to bring you this series of webinars covering how to safely choose and use ladders. Partnering with ALI for this series is Werner. Werner actively advocates for ladder safety and accident prevention through their range of innovative product solutions, in-person training, and online educational programs. Today's presentation is meant to be interactive. Throughout this presentation, we will be taking questions from attendees using the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your screen. We will also provide time at the end to answer any remaining questions. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with all attendees later this week, along with a PDF of the presentation. This recording, along with the 3 previous webinars, will be hosted online at laddersafetymonth.com. With that, I'll pass it over to Diana and Eric.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. My name is Diana Arshan. I'm the Senior Product Manager for our stepladder category at Werner Co. And I'll take you today through a webinar called Safety at the Top. So we'll talk about, obviously, safety while at the top of the ladder and getting basically to the ladder. You have had, let me go to the next slide. There we go. You might have seen the other 3 webinars that have already happened. The first one was how to choose a ladder. And this was basically an overview of how to go about choosing which type of ladder you need for which job. What is it that you're doing? Obviously, just a quick summary of that. What height are you going to be working at? Are you working outside or inside? Are you going to be leaning the ladder? What reach height are you looking for? Are you going to be working near electricity or not? That'll determine if you need, a fiberglass ladder or an aluminum ladder. And then obviously also very important is how much weight are you bringing up the ladder with you? That includes your own body weight and any supplies, tools, and things like that you're bringing up on the ladder with you. That would require a specific duty rating for the ladder to obviously be safe to use. And also, are you going to be using an extension ladder versus like a multifunction ladder or step ladder? So that was how to choose a ladder. The next webinar was ladder inspection and setup. And this was basically going through understanding the proper handling of ladders, care and maintenance of the ladders, with inspection, walking it down, inspecting it from top to bottom before every use. Because understanding that ladders can be damaged while in transit or storage and through misuse and abuse. Laying it down, inspecting the rails, the rungs, missing feet pads, all very important. Lifting it up, making sure that the top is not cracked, spreaders aren't loose, the labels are all visible and readable. So that was very high level overview of ladder inspection and setup. The third webinar was safety while climbing, and this is basically understanding your ladder, right? Understanding what are all the labels on your ladder, what do they mean, what does the duty rating, like as I mentioned earlier, mean, and how important that is, right? If you're using, a 300-pound ladder, but you weigh 295 pounds and you're bringing a tool belt with you that's 50 pounds and whatever else that you're carrying up there with you, got to be very, very conscious of how much weight you're putting on the appropriate ladder. And with that, we're going to get into safety at the top. I'm going to go over some basic ladder safety. This is appropriate for all ladders, the basics essentially. So obviously the do's: wear shoes that have non-slip soles. Make sure that they're free of mud, oil, or anything slippery. That's basically self-explanatory, right? Use fiberglass ladders if there's even a remote chance that you're going to be working near electricity or overhead power lines. The fiberglass ladders are non-conductive, so they are safe to work around electricity. Aluminum ladders are not. Be sure that all ladder feet are on firm, level ground. Solid footing is necessary for ladder safety usage. Ladder shoes are equipped with our spur plates. Spur plates are for use on penetrable surfaces. Werner extension ladders shoes are designed to pivot for use on firm, non-slippery surfaces. Use extra caution in windy weather. Obviously, if at all, if you're working outside and it's avoidable, try not to get on the ladder when it's like, super windy. But if you have to get up there, make sure that you're tying off the ladder, make sure that the ladder, you know, is really fully secured so it doesn't slip. So if you don't slip off the ladder doesn't slip underneath you. And then if at all possible, also have another person there with you, maybe to spot the ladder, hold the ladder, or spot you. Because again, that becomes a pretty dangerous situation. Check for and replace frayed or damaged electrical cords. Self-explanatory, right? We want to make sure we avoid any issues like that. And then use double insulated power tools as well as grounded cords and outlets. Again, also very, very important when working around electricity. Also be careful if you use a tool belt, right? Make sure that the tools do not catch on the ladder when you're going up the ladder. Keep your body sort of center and just like pay attention to where that tool belt hits you on your body and where, like, how close it is to the ladder that you're climbing. Any questions on that?
No questions so far. Nope.
Awesome. So here's some basic ladder do nots. So please do not ever do any of these things. So never position the ladder where it blocks foot traffic, work vehicles, or where it could be bumped by a door. Obviously, right? You're standing in front of a door, maybe put up a sign on the other end of that door so somebody who might, try to open that door your way while you're standing on the other side of that door, you don't go flying off of that ladder. Maybe put up a sign that says work in progress. Make sure that you don't get hit, basically knocked off the ladder. Never drop or throw ladders. This is very important. Doing this can damage or weaken them, which can cause serious injury, right? You might throw the ladder, onto a truck, onto a floor, wherever it is that you're putting it. But over time, you can loosen rails or rivets, or you may not even know that something is wrong with it, right? Until you go to use it the next time, but then the ladder, there could be damages, which is also why it's important to inspect that ladder before you get on it every time. Never place or use a ladder on a slippery surface or on even ground that can cause an accident. That obviously makes sense, right? That footing of that ladder is only really as good as the solid ground that it's on. And if you're working somewhere like an industrial kitchen or something like that, and there's oil spilled on the floor, be very, very careful. Try to wipe it off. Maybe make sure that that ladder is stable before you're getting on it. Never leave a ladder unattended. This may present a hazard to others. Obviously, not everyone knows the proper techniques of how to get on a ladder. Obviously, if there's children involved, they just see something and they're just going to go climb it. So be careful with that. Never use any ladder that has been exposed to fire, acids, or other strong chemicals. This is important because, again, that any one of those things can damage or weaken the ladder. And don't move the ladder with materials on it. They may fall and cause damage or an injury. This is very, very important. If you move that ladder, especially if it's a large ladder and there's something on top of it, you're going to move it. It could hit you in the head. It could hit somebody else in the head. It could damage the floor, wherever it is you're working with, the wall. So just try not to move the ladder with any of your materials that you're working with, tools or anything like that, on the ladder unless they're secured somehow to that ladder. Any questions on that?
Nope, no questions so far.
Awesome. So now we're going to get into some basics in terms of safety at the top when we're talking about step ladders. Step ladders, obviously, are these A-frame looking ladders. They come in different sizes and duty ratings, and obviously work best for kind of low to medium heights. So here are some do's. Face the ladder when climbing. This is obviously, right? You don't want to climb this thing backwards. Face it while climbing. Make sure it's stable. Maintain 3 points of contact. This is very, very important. One of your points of contact can be like your body, your knees, as you kind of lean into the ladder, because obviously, you're going to want to maybe use 2 hands to work. So how is that, what other point of contact? So obviously it's your 2 feet, and then maybe some other part of your body that's leaning into the ladder. But when you're climbing, you always want to have either 2 hands and 1 foot or 2 feet and 1 hand, at least on the ladder for safety. Stay in the middle. Belt buckle is in the center. So this is kind of like as you're climbing up the ladder, you're holding on to the rails. it's a good practice to like make sure your belt buckle is kind of centered with the ladder. Then you know you're not like leaning on one end or the other, causing some instability. You're centered yourself, you're centered against that ladder. Utilize accessories. Werner sells a ton of lockable accessories that go into that can lock into the top of your ladder, as well as the top cap itself has some storage features. Use them. It's really easy to go up and down the ladder the first several times, but then you want to avoid fatigue going up and down the ladder. So we have these things for you. You can bring what you need with you, so it minimizes you going up and down the ladder, which minimizes fatigue. And when you're fatigued, hopefully will not fall off or do anything that could cause damage or harm to you. Fully open the ladder and firmly lock both spreaders. That's an important thing when you're setting up your ladder. Make sure that those spreaders are like locked in place and it's not like in a V shape of any kind. If you need to adjust the ladder throughout the course of the job that you're doing, you should remove your tools, like I said earlier, or use a proper accessory to secure them in place. This again, very important. And then again, utilizing the accessories again minimizes the trips up and down that can cause fatigue. Some do nots at the ladder, on the ladder top. Do not use the top two rungs, right? You're not supposed to go up on those two, the highest two rungs of any step ladder, just not allowed. Do not walk the ladder. Walking the ladder, we mean when you are on a step ladder, you can like kind of pivot your body, and what that does is it makes the ladder kind of walk with you. So instead of getting down off the ladder completely, picking up the ladder and moving it to where you need it to be to do the next task that you're doing, people will walk, basically, shimmy their body and move the ladder. Do not do that. It ruins the rails. You can also fall off the ladder when doing that. So don't do that. Obviously, do not face backwards when you're on a step ladder. When you're on an A-frame step ladder, you cannot face backwards. You have to face forwards. And do not lean the ladder. Leaning the ladder means if you're up on the ladder and you're doing something and you go to you're just gonna go reach and do something like this. If you're leaning and you lean far enough where your body weight is kind of pushing to one side or another side, you can tip the ladder. The ladder can fall from underneath you. You can fall off the ladder. It's not a good idea. Don't climb on the back of a single-sided step ladder. There are two types of A-frame ladders. Well, there's more than two types, but basically you have a regular ladder, right, where you have the steps on one side, and then there are double-sided ladders. So the ladders that have only one side that is applicable to climb, like even this picture right in the middle here, that's the only side you're allowed to climb on. Do not climb on the other side. If you need to reposition the ladder, reposition the ladder. Because what happens is that other side is not designed to carry a person's weight. So doing so can damage the ladder almost immediately and result in an injury. If you have a double-sided step ladder, which basically means both sides have the appropriate steps and appropriate load-bearing capability, two people can climb simultaneously on one ladder, but you've got to make sure that it is a double-sided step ladder. Never climb on a closed step ladder. You don't want to do that. It's very dangerous. You can fall. The ladder will come out from underneath you, resulting in injury. Never stand or sit on a pale shelf. A pale shelf is, I don't know if you've seen those ladders where they have kind of right, the ladder top is a little shelf that comes out. It's usually like black or blue. That is not designed to carry anybody's weight. The pale shelf will break if you sit on it or step on it, and the entire ladder is going to go toppling over. So that pale shelf is used to hold something. We could put a paint bucket on there, some tools, like a tape measure, things like that. You can put on the pale shelf. It's for storage. It's not meant to hold a person's weight. Don't stand or sit on the ladder top. That picture in the top right corner, that is a big no-no. It is not, again, you could very easily lose your balance and tip the ladder. Ladder tops there are warnings, like lots of warnings generally on the ladder tops, warning the users that they cannot stand or sit, but just a reiteration, that is something you never, ever want to do. Any questions?
Yes, we have some. So we've
Sure.
got a couple. So Bobby asks, there are lots of questions about working off an A-frame ladder. Could you expand on the 3 points of contact and releasing your hands to work?
Yeah, so 3 points of contact basically means when you, the original concept essentially is when you are climbing the ladder. When you're climbing the ladder, you want to make sure you have at least 3 points of contact. What that means is, like, kind of visualize yourself standing in front of that ladder, getting ready to climb, or climbing the ladder itself, right? You will have 2 hands, each one of your hands holding the rungs, and then you're stepping on the steps, right? So obviously, if you have 1 foot on one step, you then have to remove 1 foot to bring it to the next step. If you have both of your hands holding onto the rails, that's 3 points of contact. The other way to look at it is if you're standing on the ladder, right? So generally you're standing on the ladder, you're using both feet. That's 2 points of contact right there. Most people are going to work with both hands, right? They're not going to hold the ladder and maybe they could, right? Hold the ladder with one hand and then be doing something with another hand. But most people it requires them to use 2 hands to do something. So what that means is your 2 feet are on the ladder, so that's 2 points of contact, and then your body or your knees are contacted with a higher surface level on that ladder. So that gives you 3 points of contact. What that does is it makes you more stable. You're not like, you're more, there are basically 3 points of contact with that ladder holding you in place to prevent you from tipping or falling and losing your balance, essentially. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you for the good question, Bobby. Greg has another question. Greg's question is, what is the height of the tallest step ladder that Werner currently produces?
Yeah, great question. The highest one that we currently make is a 12-foot step ladder that has a reach height of 16 feet, essentially. So,
all right, thank you. That's all the questions we've got so far.
Great.
And one point to add on to that, Diana, we actually do make a 20-foot as well. I just double checked.
Oh, okay.
So that's the T7420, in case anybody's interested.
Oh, okay. I thought that. I know we used to make a 16-foot ladder. I don't think we do anymore. I did not know we had a 20-foot step ladder. I have never come across a 20-foot step ladder.
It's gigantic.
Yeah. Maybe at that point, maybe want to think about an extension ladder, potentially.
Yeah, but I could see if you're in like the middle of a very tall foyer or something, hanging a chandelier, definitely see where that would come in handy.
Yep. Good to know. Thank you. All right. Leaning ladders. Leaning ladders are basically also A-frame ladders, right? You can see the A-frame, but these ladders are specifically designed to lean. The big difference between a leaning ladder and what I just talked about, which is the traditional A-frame step ladders, traditional A-frame, try saying that quickly, step ladders are not designed to lean. We know that people lean them. People admit to us that they lean them. They know they're not supposed to lean them, but they lean them anyways. This is a big, big problem. Ladders that are not designed to lean, that get leaned, is very dangerous. What happens is that ladder can, and most likely will, slip out from underneath you because there's nothing gripping that ladder to wherever you're leaning it against. Leaning ladders have leaning pads at the top of the ladder. They're non-marring pads, like a not feltish, but like a rubbery type material that basically, as you're leaning it, like they kind of hold it into place. The other thing what happens is in a leaning ladder, there's a latch that holds the back rail to the front rail. A traditional step ladder does not have that. So what happens is if you're leaning a lather that's not supposed to be leaned, if that back rail comes out, you're coming off that ladder. That ladder's gonna fall. On a leaning ladder, that latch holds it in place. You've got different type of feet on the ladder, which again, all of these things put together make it very, very safe too lean. So if you're gonna lean a ladder, please lean the appropriate ladder. When you're leaning, give into the leaning ladders. That's what they are basically doing. So when you're on the ladder and it's leaning, you can lean in on the ladder. The whole point of a leaning ladder is it gets you closer to whatever it is that you're doing than if you're in a traditional A-frame, right? You're leaning in to do some more detailed work. And it helps a lot if you're, for many people, when you get closer to the job that you're doing, especially a lot of detailed work. Very, very important. The step that can be stepped on in leaning mode is one step lower than where a traditional ladder is, right? So we know that you can step on a traditional ladder. You cannot step on those top two rungs. On a leaning ladder, it's one rung below that. Again, it's all for safety and kind of where that weight is bearing down on that ladder. The back rail signifies it is safe to lean. This is very important. When you see a traditional ladder, so let me just go back to this picture really quick, right? If you look here, all the rail, the back rail and the front rails are the same color. These ladders are standard step ladders. They are not designed to lean. If you see a ladder like this where the back rail has a completely different color, that means it is safe to lean. It is designed to lean. Any questions on that?
We actually do have one from
Great.
Brian. Brian's question is, first of all, comment, interesting. Actual question, roughly how long have your leaning ladders been available?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a very good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I think they've been available for the last, I want to say at least 5 years they've been available.
All right. And then James has a question. James's question is, how do trestle ladders compare to step ladders?
Like the trestle ladders where does he mean like where the ladder kind of comes out from the middle, like where it's kind of a combo step ladder / extension ladder?
Yes.
So yeah, those are like a specialty ladder. So you basically, what that question means, or what I think it means, is you have a traditional A-frame, and then there's a trestle. There's basically like a ladder that comes, like a straight ladder that goes from the center up. So you climb, up the side of a traditional step ladder, and then there's like a straight ladder that goes in. You can climb on the top of that trestle part, but again, you don't want to go 2 rungs, those top 2 rungs. What happens is you want your body, when the center of gravity with that ladder, to stay kind of more centered and more towards the bottom. So yeah, when that trestle comes out, you can use that trestle, but again, stay off of those top several steps.
All right, the questions are flowing. And William
Awesome.
has a question. William's question is about the top 2 rungs. If you're not supposed to step on the top 2 rungs, why do they provide steps?
So that's a good question, because of the stability of the ladder. Like that's a great question. It's probably a very good question for engineering. The steps are there to get you to the height that you need it to, right? Because if there were no steps, let's say, look at this picture on the left, right? Let's say those top 2 steps were missing. What's going to happen? You're going to fall through that hole that's there. What is stopping you from literally kind of tipping over and falling through that hole? So that blocks your body from going anywhere, and it keeps the ladder stable itself and even.
And just to add in on that, Diana, that's absolutely right. It adds some more areas to give you that 3 points of contact for stability as well. Yep. So you can, put your belt buckle into a step, and it makes the ladder, stiffer and more stable, like Diana said. And we do have warning stickers on those steps, so you're to signify that you're not supposed to step on them.
Oh, wow. All right. The questions are coming in.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bobby, I do need a clarifying question. Are you talking about leaning ladders? Because Bobby's question is, can they be leaned against a flat surface? So I assume that's about leaning ladders.
Yes.
Okay.
I would assume, yes. So
yeah.
Yes, so like this is our lean safe ladder. Our lean safe ladder, you can lean against a flat surface, a stud, like you see it right there, like in the middle picture, and also corners as well. There's corner leaning as well. So this is a full capability leaning ladder. So majority of the leaning that people do is against a flat wall. So absolutely yes. And then with our ladder, you can also, you can see, you can nest it between like over like a post or in a corner as well.
And then Greg has another question. Greg's question is, are step ladders available that do not include the top two rungs?
So there are, but and it's actually my next slide, and I'll tell you, they're called podium ladders. And so they're a little bit different, and I'll walk you through it. But generally, no. As far as step ladders go, no. There's always those top two rungs, again, for the safety, to keep the ladder stable and to keep you safe while you're on that ladder. Because if you're standing on that third step and there's all this room between you, like literally between where your feet hit on that third step and the top, if you for a second like forget like what's happening, if you know you're working on something, there's a big chance you could fall through that ladder and that ladder can collapse on top of you.
All right. And then Ben's question is, can you talk about straddling the top of a twin step ladder? Is this something that is considered unsafe?
Yes, it is very unsafe. We never recommend straddling any of the ladders, even the twin step ladders. Two people can climb a ladder. One person can climb that ladder. You can do whatever it is that you need to do, but straddling the ladder is never something that we recommend or say that's something that is safe to do, because again, you're not meant to go that high on the ladder. Even on a twin step ladder, you're still not supposed to go above those top two steps. So no, not safe.
Yeah, and yeah, such an important point. I'll just add in, Diana, I completely agree. And like this isn't just a Werner recommendation either. This comes directly from OSHA and ANSI, with years of data on accidents that kind of drive these rules and ladder design parameters that we have to follow. Yeah. So it's we're not trying to be mean and tell you can't use your ladder this way or that way. It's really coming, from the powers that be that have seen so many accidents and trying to, help keep everybody safe on site.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very good point, Eric.
There you go, y'all. No doing parkour on your ladder. All right, no more questions.
Awesome. All right, so podium ladders. This is a type of step ladder. Depends on, we at Werner, this is a type of step ladder. Some, other manufacturers might call this like a specialty type ladder. It just depends on how you look at it. It is an A-frame, right? But if you look at this ladder, it has a podium platform type surface and a higher guardrail. So the difference between this and a step ladder, it's obvious, right? So you climb up the steps, and then you have a flat, larger surface to work off of. What this is obviously good for, this is fantastic for when you are working on something that you're up there for a long period of time, right? It is much more comfortable to stand on a flat surface with your 2 feet than on a rung, right? Than on a step. If you're doing detailed work, running wires, crown moldings, whatever it is that you're working on that requires just a long time to be up there, this is probably a very good choice for you, because again, you have that flat surface, you have the 3 points of contact, right? Your 2 feet are on the platform surface. Your body, your hip, wherever it is that it hits you, can lean into that top. That top is also a functional top. There's storage at the top. You can also lock in one of our accessories to the top of that as well. Like you can see at the bottom, on the middle bottom picture, those 2 holes that kind of top, that is for our accessories to be locked in. So you could put your tools and things in there as well. And so the rules for this ladder for safety are very, very similar to that of step ladders. It's essentially the exact same thing. The only difference is, in my opinion, right, or really it's a factual thing, you're more comfortable when standing on it. It allows you to turn 360, right? Or at least turn sideways and turn sideways to do a job, which again, you're not allowed to do on a standard step ladder. You can do here because you have that large working surface. Any questions on this ladder?
Yes, we just got a question from Greg. Greg's question is, what is the tallest podium ladder that Werner produces?
Good question. It is a 12-foot podium ladder. That is the highest one that we make. It is massive. It's massive. It's a very large ladder, because this is another thing I want to clear up, because it does get confusing even for the professional user who's using these things every day. When you're talking about a podium ladder versus a step ladder, right? So a step ladder, say you have a 6-foot step ladder. That means you have basically 6 feet to the top of that ladder. Here, if you have a 4-foot podium, right? So if you are, this happens to be a 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the picture on the left, this is a 4-foot podium ladder, but it's basically like being on a 6-foot step ladder, because your reach height is the same, essentially. That is like standing on a 6-foot step ladder. I know it's a little bit confusing, but that's basically how it works. So if you're going to buy one of these ladders, just be conscious of the height of your podium versus the height of a step ladder. Because podium ladders, these ladders, they're bigger because of that guardrail. They're taller. So like when you're maneuvering it, just know that a 4-foot podium ladder is equivalent in size to a 6-foot step ladder.
Yeah, just to illustrate that. Oh, sorry, just to illustrate that a little bit, for March Madness, I'm sure a few of us are probably watching, to cut down the nets at the end of the game, they're using 12-foot podium ladders. And, to make sure you purchase the right one when you're on site, especially you're typically going to be working on ceilings or the higher portion of a wall. When you're doing this, running your mechanicals, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, doing repetitive work, these are really easy to move down. But to Diana's point, you want to make sure you have the appropriate sized ladder to be able to work at that repetitive height over and over and over again, because you don't want to reach too high up when you're doing that work. You want to have your hands hopefully right here. So you'll see guys, make sure they have the perfect sized ladder for whatever environment they're in.
And then Chris had a question. Chris's question is, do you make any podiums or other types of ladders with handrails for fall protection?
Handrails for fall protection. So I want to say that the podium ladder is probably what he's asking about. So this is one. We also make something called a platform ladder, which is essentially very similar to this, except that guardrail is lower. So it kind of hits you maybe at the knee or right below the knee. But what it does is it's not, the physical ladder itself is not so big for maneuvering purposes, but it still gives you that surface to work on.
Chris, oh, sorry, Diana.
No, go ahead.
I wonder if Chris is maybe thinking about our Podium Gate. Like the AC63, the Podium Gate actually comes back. You can close the gate behind you when you enter the podium, and it provides you a little bit of protection from accidentally walking too far backwards and falling off of the top of the podium.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good point, especially with the larger podiums. Those are generally get pretty popular, right? Because to what Eric just said, you attach it basically, so your entire body is enclosed. So there's less probability of you kind of coming off of that ladder.
Awesome. And then Brian had one clarifying question. So a 12-foot podium ladder is like the platform, is it like the 12th foot, like it's 12 feet up?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. There you go, Brian. I'm gonna let you sit with that, my guy.
Yeah.
Chris asks as a follow-up to his question, was wondering, because Little Giant makes a podium ladder that's designed like an A-frame, but it has handrails with a self-closing gate. So I was wondering if Werner made one that was similar.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Are you talking about the one where there's like two 2 steps at the top, like kind of like 2 larger steps at the top. Is that the one that you're referring to?
Chris, weigh in there, my person. We gotta wait for it to come through the internet.
Sure.
No, it has a platform, Chris says.
It has a platform, but then you're saying it has like a gate around it? Because usually there are ladders like that come with a podium gate. You can get it factory installed basically with a podium gate, but it's like it's an accessory. It's an add-on. Those generally are not just, they don't come that way unless you request it to come that way.
Got it. So yeah, Chris did confirm that yes, what you were describing is what he was talking about. And so Chris, I hope that answered your question, because Diana preemptively answered it before you typed yes. So, so with that, those are all the questions we've got right now.
Awesome. All right, extension ladders. And I'll let Eric jump in here if I say something that I'm not supposed to say, but basically here are some basic do's when climbing extension ladders. Again, face forward, right? There's no other way for you to face except forward when climbing an extension ladder. Tie off the top of the ladder when accessing. Extend 3 feet above the landing. Raise an extension ladder only while standing on the ground. Place 1 foot at the bottom of the rung of the base section to help basically secure the ladder. Use the rope and pulley to raise the fly section. Place the ladder top so both rails are fully supported. The support area should be at least 12 inches wide on both sides of the ladder. Tie off an extension ladder to a roof or for gutter support whenever possible to prevent slipping. Stake it down. Stake or tie down the bottom and the top of an extension ladder when possible to prevent outward slipping. Properly use spur plates on penetrable surfaces. And then check for overhead clearance and ensure that there's no live electrical wires nearby before extending your extension ladder. Any questions on that? I know that's a lot of information.
Greg coming in hot with a question right when you asked. Greg's
Okay.
question, has Werner explored the possibility of using newer composite materials instead of fiberglass to help lessen the overall weight of the ladder?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm going to let Eric answer that question because I know
You know,
he has a good one.
That is a great question. Werner, us at Werner, we're always looking into ways to improve our extension ladders. We know, like OSHA tells us, right? Anything over 50 pounds is a 2-man lift. So we're always looking for opportunities to take weight out of our ladders. There are a lot of other composite materials out there. You might be thinking of carbon fiber or other things like that. The problem's always been cost, but we are always evaluating ways to make our ladders lighter.
No more questions so far.
Awesome. So some of the do nots on an extension ladder. First of all, do not do what this guy is doing in the picture, ever. Don't ever do that. Don't use the top 3 rungs on an extension ladder. Don't face backwards on an extension ladder. Don't reach, right? What this man is doing in the picture is not good. It's not safe at all. Keep your belt, again, between the rails. It's very similar on step ladders. It's the same idea. And do not carry access tools with you. Again, especially if you're going up high. Don't tie 2 ladders together to make a longer section. Don't ever do that. You can exceed the load capacity of the ladders, or they may come apart and you're gonna come off the ladder is gonna fall, it's resulting in a lot of injury. Never set up or use an extension ladder or an individual, extension ladder section upside down or backwards. The fly section must be nearest the climber. Don't place the base of an extension ladder top too close to the building, as it may topple over backwards. So when you're standing and you're positioning your ladder, you have to do it in a way that's kind of like, it's hard to do virtually, but like your feet should be like kind of touching the bottom rails, right? And then you extend your hands, so your hands are basically fully extended, so then you could lean it so it's at the right angle against whatever it is that you're leaning against. It's very important. Don't place the base of an extension ladder too far from its vertical support point, as it may slip out from the bottom as well. So there's instructions on the ladder, so it's very important to follow those instructions to set up the proper ladder at that correct, I think it's 75.5 degree working angle. Never carry an extension ladder in the unlocked or extended position. It's dangerous. They're big, they're heavy. You don't want to do that. You want to put it back into its unextended form before picking it up or carrying it. Don't use an extension ladder as a lever, brace, or support or hoist. This can damage the ladder. Don't use an extension ladder in the horizontal, so like the flat position. You may damage the ladder. It's not designed to support people or materials when it's like this, basically. You may also lose your balance and fall. So we recommend do not do any of that.
Yeah, never use it as a bridge.
Yeah, as a bridge, essentially. Like, yeah. Any questions on that?
No questions so far.
Hey, Diana, if I could, I'd just like to go back a point. Great job on setting up the extension ladder. I thought Diana did a really good job talking about putting your feet down at the foot of the ladder, and you're really bracing the extension ladder at the swivel feet with the toes of your boots. And when you have your toes of your boots on the swivel feet of the ladder, you want to be able to stick your arms out at shoulder length and just touch the ladder. That's typically around the proper angle you want your extension ladder set up. If it's set up too steeply, meaning that your arms are bent and the ladder's closer to your body, it's much easier for the ladder to slip or you to fall off the ladder. If the ladder is very far away from your hands when your arms are out at shoulder height, the ladder could actually slide down the building a lot easier. That 75.5 degree angle, again, that's ANSI OSHA regulation. You may have also heard that called the 4-to-1 rule. So for example, 4-to-1, if you have a 20-foot extension ladder fully extended, you want it to be you want the base of that ladder to be 5 feet away from the wall, and that's approximately 75.5 degrees. And that'll save you a whole lot of headaches. Any questions before we move on from extension ladders?
No questions right now.
All right, thanks.
Awesome. Multi-use ladders. Everybody, I think, is familiar with what a multi-use ladder is. It's basically a ladder that can be used several different ways, right? It can be used as a double-sided ladder, a wall ladder, a stairway ladder, like a straight ladder, kind of like an extension form. You could use it as a scaffold bracket. Like there's just multiple ways to use a multi-function ladder. What's the most important thing here is to read all of the instructions on how to use it, because there are so many different functions. You want to make sure that if you are, for example, using it on a stairway, you want to make sure that that ladder is set up appropriately and according to the rules of that ladder, because obviously you're standing on a staircase, right? You want to make sure that you're safe and you don't fall and the ladder doesn't fall while you're on a staircase. So that's the biggest do of using a multi-use ladder, is reading the instructions and really digesting those instructions and setting up your ladder properly. Another thing about these ladders, so homeowners like these type of ladders because of all the different uses it has, right? It might, instead of having 2 or 3 ladders maybe in their garage, a homeowner maybe can have one of these and it does everything that they would ever need it to do. Scaffold brackets. Important note here, follow the manufacturer recommendations again and usage instructions. Very important. You want to make sure if you're doing any one of these things, you're doing it in a very, very safe way. Any quick questions here?
Nope, no questions.
So just a quick summary, choose the type of ladder based on your environment and surroundings, right? Choose the ladder height based on where you need to reach, and remember the rules of how high you can safely climb. Remember where you can step at the top of whatever ladder that you're on. There's a difference between an extension and a step ladder. And very important, point number 4, know the limitations of the different styles of the ladders. They're all, a lot of them seem very similar, but there are some key differences, and you've got to know what you're doing on each of those ladders to make sure that you're safe while you're up there. And then if you're not sure, ask somebody, ask for training, go to our website. We have a bunch of safety information on there. You can even, probably YouTube, proper safety ways to use a ladder, but really ask somebody of how to use something if you're not sure. And with that, are there any questions?
Yes, we have another question we have a few questions. Oh my gosh, here they come. Yes, bring on the questions. While I'm asking this question, y'all, please feel free to ask questions in the chat or feel free to use the Q&A box. So this question from Greg says, Werner does a nice job of color coding their ladders based upon its duty rating. Is there a movement to make this a national consensus standard with other manufacturers?
It's a good question. So we are working right now. So the color coding, it's to your point, it's not something that has been, it's not a industry standard. It kind of almost seems like it has become an industry standard because Werner kind of pioneered it, and it's become the standard because Werner is the market leader. But we are working on updating some of the look and the feel, not the feel, but the look of our ladders. And we're trying to figure out how to incorporate some of those colors into the duty ratings to have them coincide. But I don't know if it's going to be a national thing that kind of becomes of it, but we're trying to figure out, because to your point, users know, right? They see an orange ladder, they know that that's a 300-pound duty rated ladder. They just know. So we're trying to figure out how to make sure that we stay consistent. But as far as making it like a national thing, I don't have the insight on that.
And then Bobby's question is there any fall protection required on platform ladders?
So fall protection is not required on platform ladders, but I say that with a but at the end, because it depends. If you're working on a commercial job site and there are job site safety directors, right, that are working on that job site, those safety directors could have specific rules on that job site. So it could be something like, okay, anything like 8-foot platform, podium ladder or higher, you have to use a podium gate. It's not something that we require, but it's something that if you're working on a specific site, the safety directors there may require it.
Do you have any other questions? I'll give us Bobby asks for a clarification. So OSHA doesn't require it.
I don't believe that they do. No. No.
But to your point though, Diana, a safety director may have a site rule that you would be required to follow.
Exactly.
All right, I'll give us another 30 or so seconds to see if anybody's still typing, because I know typing sometimes takes a little bit. Oh, yep, Bobby's comment is, since OSHA doesn't require it, that's like the big problem, since it's not like a standard.
I mean, guys, some of these podium ladders, like when you see them, they're so big that like you may want to consider using one just because they're very high up there. And if you think about it, if it's a platform ladder and you're working and you're turning, it just has that additional sense of security for you up there. So.
All right. So with that, I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to say thank you, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I want to thank Diana and Eric for sharing their expertise with us. With that, we hope you have enjoyed this year's ladder safety webinar series and found safety best practices to use on the job and at home. You can find the recording of each webinar in the series at Ladder Safety Series online at laddersafetymonth.com, along with additional safety resources. I want to thank you again to Werner for sponsoring the series and to all of you for joining us and being so engaged throughout the month. With that, happy National Ladder Safety Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.